It's the dream again. The city of stone.
So, you found this group and you've instantly fallen in love with them. The music is good, the members are fun, and they seem to fit your taste to a T. You start listening to all of their music, thinking to yourself, wow, this is so refreshing. Why don't other groups do this? This seems to work so well for them. And then, by the next comeback, they've done a complete 180 on you, and you realize, as the group is suddenly breaking all of their own records with their most generic release yet, that this is why others don't do something different. Different doesn't sell. And sadly, that seems to be the reality of K-pop right now, and for however much I do wish that these brighter, sweet concepts would rise to the top again, it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. With all of that said, let's look at some of these different concept changes on a few different groups. Before I get too deep into this, I do want to say that this is a ranking video, and it is based on two factors. A, who initiated the concept the best, aka whose change was the most subtle / made the most sense for their music or concept. B, my personal enjoyment of their music both before and after the initial release. This isn't exactly a full list of all the different concept changes over the years, just the ones I personally wanted to touch on. Basically, the only criteria is having a pretty major shift in style or concept and sticking with it. So groups like GOT7 or Red Velvet, for example, who are known for switching from concept to concept, will not be included. Anyways, enough of my rambling. Please buckle your seatbelts and get ready for the ride. I seriously debated actually adding weekly for a few different reasons. Mainly because this is only their first strike, and whether or not they'll actually stick with this concept is still kind of up in the air. But considering this is their best comeback so far, sales-wise at least, I'd say they're probably gonna stay on this track for at least a little bit longer. I actually really like Vimparda as a song. Definitely not my favorite weekly track, but also not the worst either. That being said, the overall change not only came out of nowhere, but their only excuse as to why they did it was a half-assed explanation of, well, it fits the concept. Kind of. Weekly is one of those groups I feel like we all really loved because of their innocent schoolgirl crush sort of concept, so I'm not really sure why they felt the need to subtly change it despite doing decent with it and also finding a great balance between the classic innocent schoolgirl sound and the more modern hip-hop inspired sound that a lot of K-pop songs go for nowadays. My main complaint as of now is that Weekly have some amazing vocals, and I don't want them to start suddenly hiding that for a mere look and style. And for however much fun it was to see Monday try to rap, the last thing they needed on top of everything else was trying to get rid of one of their best vocalists. So while I don't hate the sound Weekly is going for, I can't help but feel a little bit disappointed that they're throwing all of their hard work away so early on into their careers, especially when they're still so young and so in tune with their old sound and style. Loona's sort of stuck in this weird predicament for me where I still enjoy their music. I won't lie and say that I've really liked any of their recent title tracks, but everything else is still good. But that's the problem. It's just good. If every single song on their first two albums were an absolute god-tier K-pop songs, I probably wouldn't be nearly as mad about the change as I am. But as it stands, for me at least, their music has definitely taken the greatest hit. Loona had this very bright, magical feel to their titles, that they sort of twisted into this fantasy-like sound throughout their albums. Whether it was a heavy EDM song like Heat or a softer melody like Stylish, their music always had this certain charm to it. It was alluring, it was magical, and with just the slightest hint of something brewing beneath the surface. Purely conceptually, I think that they still do a decent job. I totally understand that it wasn't exactly their choice to just up and drop everything that they had built up beforehand, and even with a lot of that gone, they still do a decent job with what they have. Their music videos are still very pretty, they're still more conceptually driven than 90% of other groups nowadays, and I really do appreciate that. And all that on top of still having amazing visuals tied into these scenes as well. However, no matter the circumstances, the change was still pretty jarring to say the least, and for however much this new style is growing on me, I can't say I don't still really miss the old stuff as well. I kind of feel the same about the boys as I do about Loona. They just have a bit of a leg up because I was sort of a fan before they changed their concept, and for however much I do kind of despise everything they put out now, I'm still so proud of the boys themselves for all the attention and positive feedback that they've gotten since their change. The boys had this really fun Boy Next Door sort of vibe to their music beforehand. It was heavily pop inspired, and likely due to them debuting before the fourth gen really exploded, didn't hold any of the very heavy EDM elements that they do now. Normally, I really like this so-called noise music, but for the boys, it feels less like they're putting out music that they want to put out, and more like they're putting out music that they're being expected to put out. I feel like they've always been compared to other groups like Stray Kids and ATEEZ by the time that they had all debuted, and because of this, I almost feel like they felt this pressure to become the performers that these two are. And to match these two absolute beasts, they started creating music that was somewhat similar so that they could at the very least compete. However, unlike with Stray Kids and ATEEZ, who have both sort of molded the sound to fit them and what they're capable of, the boys feel more like they're just kind of using trends to their advantage. The stylistic choices that made songs like Giddy Up and DDD are nowhere to be found in their recent releases, and for however much I do think that they have improved as performers to keep up with this change, I can't help but feel like their old style just had more feeling to it. It showed this creativity that I don't think their songs now do. I think my main complaint with the boys isn't that they need to go back to their old sound, rather it's something that they need to find that is uniquely theirs. And they need to capitalize on it. Now. Now that they've built this somewhat of a solid fanbase, experimenting with their concept and finding something that's unique to them would be something that I think could really push them forward and benefit them in the long run. TXT is yet another one I really contemplated actually adding, mostly because I feel like they seem to be a group where their concepts change every few comebacks, but even with these changes, they've always kept a certain sound throughout them, something I feel like is missing from some of their more recent albums. If I'm being completely honest, Love Song is one of my favorite songs ever. It's the last thing I expected from them, but they did such an amazing job bringing this genre back from the dead and giving new life to what once was. That being said, I would have been happy with just that. That album, while different, still felt like TXT. It didn't seem like something that just anyone would release, but with the two releases after that, I feel like they've strayed farther and farther away from what made them so interesting in the first place. Honestly, they did have a relatively steady decline into the darker style, from this coming-of-age story that is Love Song to this classic dark boy group title track that is Good Boy Gone Bad. And if this is something they were planning on sticking with, I would argue they've done a really good job leading up to it. But I refuse to believe that this is the end of TXT as we know it, and I really hope that with their next album, they regain some of their old strengths again. I think my main issue with them is that I'm just tired of this look on them. I'm ready for something new again, something with that familiar touch of TXT magic. And I really hope we get that soon because I'm so tired of listening to We Lost the Summer every 5 minutes and telling myself that there's still more to them than this edgy sound that they've adopted. CLC are kind of the odd ones out on this list, as when they originally debuted, they were doing what basically everyone else was doing with this cutesy, somewhat quirky concept. However, just a few albums in, they had a massive change in sound and concept to what, at the time, was relatively new to the scene. That classic girl crush sound that we know so well on them was certainly a huge turnaround, but it proved to be pretty successful in the grand scheme of things. Hobgoblin is easily one of their most memorable songs, and remains a staple in the girl crush side of K-pop even today. Personally, I do think I like their harder style a little bit more in this case. Both sides of CLC brought some absolute bangers to the table, but there's just something that their albums like Crystal and Number One have that I feel like their others don't quite live up to. Another interesting thing about CLC is I feel as if the members are pretty split down the middle on which side they're actually better at. I know Yujin especially has talked about how she felt she couldn't quite live up to CLC's badass image that they found, and always thought she personally could do her best with the more lighthearted concepts. Meanwhile, I think someone like Yeon, for example, looks the best with their songs with a bit more intensity. I mean, the girl absolutely made Song into the song she is today. All in all, CLC is one of those groups that I feel like would have looked good either way. They fit both sides really well, and my only complaint would be that there isn't enough of either. If there's one thing I could give these girls, it would be the chance to have made even more music together, whichever side they choose to go with.
Can you be fine? Yeah.
Golden Child is probably the group that I have the most issues with, but for very petty reasons. If I'm being totally honest, I still have really mixed feelings on Golden Child's absolute betrayal when killing off their old sound. I want with everything in me to hate everything that they've put out from now on, but honestly, their music might be even better now than it was before. While their old sound took some classic elements of other boy groups that had done cute concepts alike, their style now feels pretty unique to them. Wannabe was not it for me, and I think that, along with the sudden change and everything, is what put me off from them for so long. I was mad that they changed such a refreshing concept, and even more so, I was mad that it was working. But after going back and listening to their music, titles and B-sides alike, I realized not only have they not lost the sound that drew me into them to the first place, but have also created something even more interesting along the way. Songs like Breathe and Bottom of the Ocean prove that they still know how to have fun with music, while songs like Burn It and Rap Pum Pum create a world that I would have never expected to see from them. I think what sets Golden Child apart from the rest for me is that it's not just the music that I enjoy more now, it's everything about them. They found the perfect balance of old and new, all while unfolding the story that they are telling perfectly. The change may have been a little bit jarring at first, and while they may look a lot different from the outside now, they're still the same Golden Child that I've always known.
내 기억을 지워야 돼. I'm poison. I know I can't take it no more.
17 is another group where I feel like they more or less just go through certain eras of specific styles and concepts rather than just jump from song to song. But I also think there has been a huge shift in feel to their music as they've grown older. What started off as a pretty cutesy concept has slowly morphed over the years, picking up and putting back different sounds and styles as they've molded into the group that they are known as today. Even when they go for something a little more playful nowadays, like Left and Right for example, it feels a lot older and cleaner than some of their older stuff. Yet even the songs that they release now feel completely different from songs like Fear and Hits that they released when they first started going through this concept change. Although some of these changes felt pretty jarring, and I do miss their old sound a little bit, even now I can't help but feel proud when looking at how much they've grown. There may have been a few stumbles along the way, but every single release shapes the next. No matter how I may feel about a certain song or concept they've tried, I can't argue that any of their songs feel like fillers, like something they put out when they just can't think of anything else to do. I'd like to think a lot of this is the members playing such a big role in their music, it almost feels like watching them learn and grow through their music. Sure, there may be a few rough patches here and there, but after 7 years of near constant releases, I think they've seen such a huge growth in their music and style. Would I kill to get a Pretty You Part 2? In a heartbeat, but I can't help but appreciate all that they have grown into as well.
Sugar pop. 아무도 몰래 말이야.
Much like with 17, I think the members of Astro have matured with their music gracefully. The thing with Astro though is that I feel like with every new era, I feel as if they just keep on rolling through rather than this sort of trial and error sort of thing. They've still held on to a lot of the same ideas that their songs like Baby and Hide and Seek have. They've just switched out those blind yellows for some more tamed down purples and blues. And once again, like Golden Child, even with their songs like Blue Flame and Knock, both of which are very different from anything they had put out before, their B-sides always held the same charm that they always had. I may be a little bit biased here, as I have always loved the sweet nostalgia that their B-sides have always provided, and I'm a sucker for that softer side of EDM that they have become so accustomed to. But I think that Astro have had one of the most seamless journeys into the more mature side of music. They've never lost their very pop-inspired roots, even if they did eventually get rid of the bubblegum that used to stick to it. I'm counting All Night as their official change in concept, and honestly, I don't think I could have asked for a better segue. It shows a softer side to them, while still being a very upbeat song. And looking at Candy Sugar Pop, a song that seems to be everything that they have grown accustomed to all rolled up into one, it is very clear that this is what they were made to do all along. Without a doubt, this sweet but bright sound is what they're best at, and I hope they'll stick with this style for a long while. Okay, let's be real. We all knew who was going to end up on top. The queens of pop themselves, Twice. They have managed to transition their music into something bigger and bolder than anything I could have ever dreamed of for them, and all while keeping something that felt so bright, so delicate, so Twice. This feels like something that they were always capable of, but it's been so exciting to see the girls grow and improve so much with each and every song. Not only have these girls grown with their music, they've improved with it, matured with it. I don't really think you need me to tell me just what Twice have done with their music. We all know their story, and we all have eyes and ears. I don't think there's any doubt that Twice have easily had one of the best transitions into this more mature sound and style of K-pop. It may have been a bit of a shock at the time, but now I can't even imagine Twice without the sound and style on them. It just fits them so well, as do their prior releases, and despite already being absolute monsters on the scene, I think them proving that they can switch it up whenever they really wanted to really solidified them as such an amazing group in the K-pop world. Anyways, that's all I have for now. Thanks so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. Until next time, travelers!